All right, guys. We got to talk some real life shit. And, you know, a lot of people don't like talking about this stuff, but we're going to get through this together. And we're going to just get through it. You know what I mean? Real life shit. Real life shit. Real life shit with Elsie. What? Real life shit. Real life shit. Real life shit with Elsie. Real life shit. Real life shit. Real life shit with Elsie. Tune in. Tune in. Tune in. You can't hear me. Now you can. Pow, 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 pow. Okay, so thank you guys for tuning in. This is going to be Sex Talk. I'm just waiting for my guests to tune in, and then I'm going to bring her on. But while we wait, let's just feel things out, you know? So tonight we're going to be talking about sex things. But you know what I mean? Not all sex things, but things that you do in sex therapy. So if you have children, like the little babies and the little ones, the little walk around, please put them to bed. Good night. You know what I mean? I'm really excited though. Uh, this is gonna be so much fun. Let me see what you guys are saying in the comments. You guys, I can read your comments. I can do all that. I can do anything and anything. So yeah, I really thought that this show would be fun to do. The next show I do will be my season finale, you would say. So I wanted to do a fun one before, we go into the last show, which is definitely serious as usual. But yeah, and I'm just excited. So yeah, I figured we would talk about what people do in sex therapy. Talk about what they tell people to do in sex therapy. I got jokes all night, all night. Yeah, hey Elaine, how are you? I'm so glad you tuned in. Thank you. I'm just waiting, for the beautiful Kate to come on, and we can get this started, guys. How are you doing, Elaine? I hope everything's well. Yes, and I just want to say that Elaine makes the best sweets. She is the sweet master. So if you need cakes, sweets, please hit Elaine Marie up because she's got it. Okay. Yeah. Come on in, guys. Just come on in. Yeah, so like I said, we're gonna if you guys are just jumping in, I'm gonna have a sex therapist on soon, and then we are gonna talk to her, and we're gonna be able to ask some questions, and she just came on. So let me introduce you guys to Kate. Let me see here. Hi, how are you, Kate? I can't see you. Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm well, Elsie. How are you?
I am good. Thank you so
I'm
much.
good. I'm good. You can't see me yet?
No, I can see you. I can see you now. Yes. Yes.
Okay,
Can you hear
good.
me well?
Good.
Or is it?
Yes.
Yes. How are you doing today,
Yeah.
Kate?
I'm okay, thanks. How about you?
I'm good. I'm excited, for this show. So
I
let's
am
I
too.
just want to jump right into it.
Okay.
So what is sex therapy, Kate?
Such a great question.
Right.
So, a sex therapist is someone who helps people anywhere where there's an intersection between their mental health and their sexuality.
Okay.
So, it can look like a lot of different things.
Okay.
In my work, I will help people heal from sexual trauma
Okay.
or help them maybe explore a new aspect of sexuality that they've been curious about and process what that means for them. I
Mm-hmm.
work with a lot of couples around mismatched libidos or different preferences for arousal and how to incorporate things that work for both parties. And I work with people around sexual dysfunctions, maybe a difficulty with an orgasm or erectile dysfunction, something along those lines.
Okay, and like, all right. So, how common are sexual difficulties in relationships?
Well, it depends on how you define sexual difficulties, but certainly it's not uncommon for people to have different kinds of fantasies, different things that they like, and it may not work for the other partner.
Right.
Um, but if you're defining it in terms of a sexual dysfunction, for example, it's probably not as uncommon as you might think, but in terms of stats, I would have to look. Like maybe around 20, 25% of people struggle with some sort of sexual difficulty.
Okay. I didn't know was that, I'm yeah, this is, first time meeting a sex therapist. So I'm like, this is all new to me. I'm like, I'm just, it's interesting though also,
Mhm.
Okay, so what made you want to be a sex therapist?
Well, my background sort of teed this up pretty well. Initially, when I went into the field of psychology, I really focused on forensic work,
Mm-hmm.
and I worked in the prison settings doing
Oh,
evaluations and treatment with sex offenders.
oh,
And in that work, I started doing a lot more. I started understanding a lot more of the nuance that comes with sexuality and arousal and
mhm,
relationships and all of the things that come with sexuality when we're not talking about offending. And then
mhm,
certainly there are more layers when there are offending behaviors. So when I transitioned out of the prison system, I wanted to continue exploring this role that sexuality plays in people's lives because even if someone is asexual or
mhm,
abstinent,
mhm,
their relationship to sexuality is an important anchor in terms
mhm.
of their identity and their way of being in the world. And so I really started to see it as having a lot more importance than I understood before. And I thought that was an interesting area to pursue.
What do you mean by like it's part of their identity?
So, one of the things that I say often is our relationship to sex is our relationship to everything.
Okay.
Now, I don't mean that necessarily in a literal way, but when you think about it, if we have a lot of shame related to our sexuality or our sex
Mhm,
life, that likely shows up in other areas of our lives. And so when we think about sex, I think about it as being a source of vitality, creativity, pleasure,
mhm.
embodied connection, certainly interpersonal connection. And we have a lot of opportunities for sex to be such either motivating or painful, and
Okay.
sometimes both,
Right.
perspective in our lives.
Well, pain is pleasure sometimes. Now, you know,
Exactly. Sometimes.
let me get it now.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so what does society get wrong about sex talk?
About sex talk,
Hmm.
I mean, a lot of things.
A lot
I
of
would
things.
say,
Well, in your
yeah.
opinion, right?
Well, I think one of the things that is my biggest complaint around the way sexuality is discussed or portrayed in the media is that it tends to be such an airbrushed conversation, and sometimes that's literally in terms of appearance.
Right.
But there's a lot of shame still around sex and stigma around sex, and so I think that it gets spoken about always with this hint of, "Uh-oh, are we doing something wrong? Is it okay?" So people have lots of different levels of comfort and discomfort in talking about sex in a way that's actually meaningful. And
Hmm.
so when
Hmm.
we can't talk about it transparently and in a way that's meaningful, what happens is we start to develop a lot of unspoken attachments to sex and
Okay.
definitions for things. And certainly there's a lack of education about what is realistic
Hmm.
and sustainable in terms of sexual pleasure, sexual behavior,
Hmm.
consent, safety, all of those things.
Okay. Yes. Yes. How come it, okay, let me see here. Sorry, I'm like, ugh, it's just one of them days. Can sex therapy make you more confident in bed?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, in sex therapy, if somebody's struggling with confidence, one of the things that I'm going to help them look at is where did those insecurities start, right? Have they always been exclusive to sex? Have they been rooted in other areas of fear of inadequacy in their lives? And we'll really, do our best to try and address the underlying cause of that. And I'll give them specific things that they can try when they're being sexual with partners, and we come back and evaluate. And it really can be a liberating experience when people have fear.
So like homework, right? Because I was
Yeah.
reading up on it, right? You give like little homeworks and stuff like that. Like, can you say what type of homework? Like, not, I don't know what you can and cannot say, without.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, let's see. Let me start by saying not everyone likes homework, so it's not an
Mhm.
automatic. If somebody wants in between session things to work on, then we certainly can talk about what exercises might be helpful for them. So
Okay.
let's say, for example, a woman was struggling with pain during sex. We
Okay.
might spend a lot of time in session talking about what the pain means to her, how does she experience it, how does she cope with it, and then we might talk about dilators
Mm.
as an option to start to help her experience penetration in a way
Mhm.
that is at her control and gradual, so she can start to increase the amount of sensation she can tolerate.
Mm.
So we'll talk about the dilators. I might do a demo on a not a doll, but like a model.
Uh-huh,
Can't
uh-huh.
think of the right word. And then if she goes home and purchases dilators, she will practice and in between sessions, and then come back and report what it was like. And again, we kind of process how does that work. So that's one example of a sex therapy specific exercise that someone might do.
How interesting that is. Um, what should I know about sex health?
About sex help?
Yes.
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by sex help. Like
I
sex
don't know. I
therapy?
wrote this. Yeah, kind of. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I
Mhm.
think maybe one thing that I would hope viewers or listeners can take away from this
Mhm.
conversation is that everybody is sexual in their own way, even if they are asexual or abstinent. And so there is nothing to be ashamed of. And there are people out there who are very well trained to help you navigate whatever might be coming up for you around sexuality or
Mhm.
your relationships. Um, and so I think, help is available, and there are
Mhm.
a lot of really skilled clinicians out there, if they are certified sex therapists, who can listen to anything you have to share. A lot of
Right,
people
right,
will come in and say, I'm going to tell you something that you've never heard before, and I
right,
guarantee
right.
I've heard it. Yeah.
I've heard. I hear you. I hear you. Okay, so
Mhm.
I have some questions from my viewers
Okay.
that I wrote down. So one of them is what is your go-to tips if everything if everything in bed was like ooh and now it's like like
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's really a question about intimacy and
mhm,
connection. So if everything in your sex life has changed suddenly, I would ask questions like, has something changed in one or both of your lives that's bringing stress in?
mhm,
Um, a lot of people will change how they feel in their bodies depending on what's going on. If they gain weight, lose weight, feel fit, don't feel fit, have a medical condition, don't. There's they've started a new medication, for example. There are a lot of things that can change our libido. So I would say get a medical workup to rule out anything biological or chemical that might be impacting your libido.
mhm,
And then let's look at the quality of the connection in the relationship. Are you both still communicating effectively? Are there resentments there? Are you maybe experiencing some habituation and you're a little bit bored? So you've got to,
mhm.
you know, find some way to create some spark and some,
Right.
some newness and novelty in the relationship. You might try some role play or talk about fantasies that you haven't indulged yet with each other. So I think a lot of it just sort of depends on how willing are people to talk about what their
Explore.
experience is, yeah, authentically, and work together to find solution.
You think like some in couples, I mean, like do you think some people feel scared to let their partner know what they really like. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So they're like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. People
Yeah,
definitely have fear sometimes around being more transparent.
that's okay. Next question. What do you think of waiting till marriage to having sex?
I think if that's what is important to the people who are getting married, then that can be really meaningful to them.
Do you think it's healthy to need a sex therapist in a relationship?
Do I think it's healthy to need a sex therapist in a
Or
relationship?
see a sex therapist? Maybe I'm wording it wrong.
Uh, here's what I'm going to say. If you get a flat tire, you go to the auto shop and you get a new tire, right? If your dishwasher breaks down, you call a maintenance person to come and fix your dishwasher. So
Right.
if something starts going wobbly for you in your sex life, not only do I think it's healthy, I think it's a really smart idea to be proactive and to work with a sex therapist who is trained to help you get in with precision and address the topic at hand so that you can get back to the business of living your life.
I hear that. Without stress in the bed. You know what I mean? Like that's
Yeah.
the last thing I want is stress in bed. I go through that outside. I want to come in bed and relieve it.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay, all right, another question. Does the G spot really exist? This is a real question. Like, wait a minute.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I think, back and forth information about that. Some of the studies talk about how the G spot is really sort of the back of the clitoris, and
Hmm.
there are more sensitivities there
Hmm.
because of that. And so I think what's important for people to remember, anyone who has a vagina or is being intimate with someone who has a vagina, uh, everyone is sensitive in different ways and in
Hmm.
different locations in their
Hmm.
bodies. So try not to be too rigid about where you think something should feel good or where you think something should be more intense,
Right.
right? Listen to your own body and the body of your partner to guide you into what works.
Amen to that. Okay, so next question. How do we keep our sex drive alive? Well, you answered that already by saying, doing role playing and stuff like that. Okay, another one. My spouse never wants to have sex anymore. What is wrong? I think you answered that too. With another
Well,
question.
yeah, there could be a lot of things going on there. One thing that I will say is that sometimes it's about stress or a medical issue or somebody's not feeling good about themselves. Other times there can be other interfering sexual practices, like perhaps somebody's arousal template is changing because they're watching too much pornography, or maybe something is shifting in what they are finding arousing or what their body is responding to. So there could be a lot of different reasons for what's going on there. But if it's something that both people are willing to talk about, usually the answer is pretty quickly determined. But it can be
Okay.
tricky if there are other layers to that conversation.
Okay. And then there's the last question. What type of questions
Okay.
are asked, I guess like in a session if couples are shy about talking, about the sexual, whatever they do in the bed. You know what I mean? If that makes sense.
What kinds of questions does the sex therapist ask or
Yeah,
the
like what
couple?
would what would be like say if me and my partner comes in and we're shy on wanting to talk about what we do, how does, not to be too and
Hmm.
what type of questions would you ask to kind of get us to
Yeah,
open up?
it's a really good question because a lot of people do come in and they're nervous, and it's the first time they've talked about sex, sometimes even with each other. So they don't know how that conversation is going to go with their partner, let alone this stranger or this person outside their relationship. So if that's the fear, I can't speak for every sex therapist, but my approach is to talk about the fear. We don't have to jump into the nitty-gritty details right away. Let's explore what would allow you to feel more comfortable. What are you nervous about? Have you talked about that before with each other? You know, what's the worst case scenario, and how might you cope if that came true, and we'll sort of explore whatever they need to start feeling more comfortable, because talking about sex can be loaded, and you know, it's not good just to rush anybody into something they're not comfortable with, especially as it relates to sex.
Right. No, of course not. Of course not, especially when it relates to sex. I definitely hear you. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
doctor. I'm sorry I didn't say doctor before. I apologize. You are a doctor.
That's
Thank you
okay.
so much, Dr. Kate. I don't know how to pronounce your last name, but thank you so much for coming
It's
on to
okay.
my show. I really appreciate it, and I
Yeah.
hope my
You're welcome.
viewers.
Thanks for the invite.
No, of course, of course. I hope to do it again, maybe a different topic, you know. Thank you. Thank you, and I appreciate it. Have a great night. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Take care.
Bye. Okay, guys. We spoke about sex therapists, right? We got some information. I hope that you guys got informed, and hey, you know, you don't have to be shy or embarrassed if, you know what I mean, if you do need to see a sex therapist, it's natural. You know what I mean? Everybody has issues, and it's okay to be, you know, seek professional help, because there is professional help for that, you know. And I thank you guys for joining me tonight. And remember to love yourself, love each other, and always be real. Bye, guys.